In 1974, a man who had already won the Nobel Prize stood in front of a graduating class at Caltech, looked at a room full of some of the smartest young people on the planet, and basically told them their education was a trap. Not because they were dumb, not because the school was bad, but because he believed almost every single one of them had already fallen for a mistake so quiet, so invisible, that they didn't even know it was happening. His name was Richard Feynman, and the warning he gave that day still lives rent-free in my head. Because once you actually get it, you can't unsee it. You start catching yourself doing the exact thing he was talking about in your classes, in your job, in conversations, even right now watching this video. So here's the deal. By the end of this, I'm going to show you the one sentence Feynman said that flips how you look at learning forever, but to get there, I have to take you back even further than that speech. Back to when Feynman was just a kid, walking through the woods with his dad, because that walk is where this whole thing starts. Feynman's father wasn't a scientist. He sold uniforms for a living, but he had this habit that low-key rewired his son's brain. One day, young Feynman is out in the forest, and another kid points at a bird and asks him, "Hey, what's that bird called?" And Feynman has no clue. So the kid goes, "That's a brown-throated thrush." Your dad doesn't teach you anything, and that stung. But when Feynman told his father about it, his dad said something wild. He said, "You can know the name of that bird in every language on earth. Chinese, German, Japanese, all of it. And when you're done, you'll know absolutely nothing about the bird. You'll only know what humans call it." Then he goes, "Look at the bird, watch what it does. That's what actually matters." Okay, pause for a second. Sit with that, because that tiny moment is the seed of everything Feynman spent his life warning people about. Knowing the name of something and understanding something are two completely different things, and here's the scary part. Your brain treats them like they're the same. That's the trap. Let me prove it to you real quick. Think about the word gravity. You've heard it 1,000 times. Apple falls, moon orbits, we stick to the ground. Cool. You feel like you understand gravity, right? Now actually answer this. Why does gravity happen? Not what it does. Why? What is it really? And if you sit there for a second, you'll notice something uncomfortable. You don't actually know. You just know the word. You've got the label, gravity, and your brain filed it away and slapped a little check mark on it like understood. Moving on, but you never open the box. Feynman noticed that humans do this constantly. We collect labels and mistake them for knowledge. And the wildest part, this happens to smart people more, not less, because smart people are really good at memorizing the names of things. Now here's where it gets even crazier. Feynman had a name for the fake version of understanding. He called it cargo cult science, and the story behind that phrase is so good it sounds made up. So during World War II, there were remote islands in the Pacific, and soldiers showed up and built air bases there. And suddenly these islands got flooded with amazing stuff. Food, supplies, cargo, all this gear flying in from the sky on airplanes, landing on runways. Then the war ended. The soldiers left, and the cargo stopped coming. So the island communities who wanted that cargo back did something completely logical from their point of view. They copied everything they saw the soldiers do. They built runways out of the ground. They made control towers out of wood. They carved headphones out of coconuts and sat there wearing them, waving sticks like they were guiding planes down. They recreated the entire form of an airbase perfectly, down to the details. And you know what happened? Nothing. No planes, no cargo, because they copied what it looked like without understanding why any of it worked. And Feynman's punchline was brutal. He said a lot of science, a lot of studying, a lot of so-called smart work is exactly this. It looks like the real thing. It has all the props, the words, the formulas, the confident vibes, but there's no plain landing because there's no real understanding underneath. Now be honest with yourself for a second. How many times have you done cargo cult studying? You memorized the formula for a test. You could write it down perfectly. You got the marks. But if someone asked you to explain why that formula is true or where it comes from, you'd freeze. You had the coconut headphones on the whole time. And look, I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because I did this for years. I thought I was learning. I was really just collecting labels and repeating them back. And this is exactly what Feynman was trying to save those students from. But here's the twist, and this is the part that genuinely gave me chills the first time it clicked. You'd think Feynman's big warning was about spotting fakes in other people. Bad scientists, lazy students, people who talk big and know nothing. But that's not who he was most worried about, not even close. Because in that 1974 speech, he dropped the line, the one I keep coming back to. He said the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Read that again. You're the easiest person to fool, not your teacher, not the internet, not some scammer. You, your own brain, is the #1 liar in your life, and it lies to you in the most comforting way possible. It tells you you get it when you don't. It nods along in a lecture and whispers, yeah, I know this, so you never stop to actually check. That's why this is so dangerous. A stranger lying to you, you can catch. But when the lie is coming from inside your own head, wearing the voice of your own confidence, how do you even notice? That's the real warning. The enemy isn't ignorance. Ignorance you can fix, because at least you know it's there. The real enemy is fake understanding, because it feels identical to the real thing from the inside. It's the check mark with an empty box behind it. So the obvious question is, okay, Feynman, how do I know if I actually understand something, or if I'm just fooling myself? And this is where the whole story lands, because Feynman left us the answer. Not in a speech this time. He left it on a chalkboard. When Feynman died in 1988, people went into his office, and there was a blackboard he'd been writing on. And in the corner, in his own handwriting, was a line that basically sums up his entire philosophy of learning. It said, "What I cannot create, I do not understand. What I cannot create, I do not understand." That's the test. That's the whole thing. If you truly understand something, you can build it back up from scratch. You can rederive the formula. You can explain the idea to a kid using no fancy words. You can start from the basics and construct the whole thing with your own hands, in your own head, without leaning on the label. And if you can't do that, if all you can do is repeat the name and recite the result, then you don't understand it yet. You've just got the coconut headphones on. And that flips studying completely. Because now the goal isn't to memorize more, it's to be able to rebuild. Take gravity again. Real understanding isn't knowing the word. It's being able to sit down and explain why a heavier object and a lighter object fall at the same rate. Why the moon is basically falling toward Earth forever and just keeps missing. When you can build the idea yourself from nothing, that's when the plane finally lands. That's real cargo. So here's what haunts me about all of this and why I couldn't stop thinking about it. Feynman wasn't warning those students to make them feel small. He was handing them a superpower. Because the moment you accept that you're the easiest person to fool, you stop trusting the checkmark. You start poking at your own understanding. You start asking, wait, could I actually build this from scratch, or am I just repeating a word? And that one habit, that tiny bit of honesty with yourself, is the difference between someone who looks smart and someone who actually is. The kid who knew the bird's name got the credit that day, but Feynman, the kid who just watched the bird, he won a Nobel Prize. So the next time you catch your brain going, yeah, I know this, stop, poke it, ask if the box behind the checkmark is actually full. Because that little pause might be the most powerful thing school never taught you. Feynman spent his whole life chasing the difference between sounding smart and being smart, and he left the map right there for anyone willing to be honest enough to use it. If this rewired something in your head even a little, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel more than you'd think. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, because the history of physics is full of them, and I'm just getting started. And drop me a comment with one thing you thought you understood, but realized you only knew the name of. I read them, and honestly, that's my favorite part. Now go watch the bird.